So we'll do IDORs. I'd rather do web stuff. All right, so let's see what we got here. The elves of Wareville are on high alert. Let's go ahead and start this thing before we get going. We need to start this. All right, so we'll start that and we'll read this story now that we've got it started. Okay. They're receiving many targeted phishing emails containing information that is not public. The support team is wary and has enlisted the help of the staff. Let's see, they have discovered a suspiciously named account names Sir Carrotbane, which has many vouchers assigned to it. For now, they have deleted the account and retrieved the vouchers, but something is going on. Can you help them investigate? So this is kind of cool. So for those of you who don't know, an IDOR is a type of web attack, and it's in an iterable one typically, where you can guess based off of whatever value they give you. So like say you're searching objects in a database and it's part of the URL, it'll be like object equals 1. Well, what happens if you say object equals 2? Well, now you can get to that object. And it can allow you to access things you shouldn't really have access to. This is one of the handful of 0 days that I have to my name, or bugs that I've identified anyway. So not super 0 days, but they are bugs I've identified. This is one. In some kind of calendar application is what mine was in. All right, so we got to use this to copy our stuff over, and it didn't copy. All right. All right, here we go. So this is the site, and so let's clear some of our screen space up here. Let's get rid of some of this stuff. All right, so I'm gonna hide that as well. All right, so we have a website and we're looking for a particular flaw. And how we find that flaw is we start looking around for where it's referencing objects. And so if we look here, we don't even see anything. We just see a URL, but we do see some buttons. And a lot of times what you'll find with folks who are doing web application pen tests, they're getting a feel for the website, trying to get a feel for the flow or the intended workflow. And they're looking for places that there may be weak links in that workflow that they can take advantage of. So in this case, I look at it, I see, okay, there's a register button. That may allow me to get access to it. We have a login screen here. We can submit stuff to be checked. So there could be SQLI here. There's a lot of different stuff here, and we'll start clicking around and figuring out in a second to see what comes down to, like where this thing actually surfaces. All right, so let's go here now. So have you ever seen a link that looks like this? So this is what I was talking about here, where we have a package ID. So instead of just 1, we see a 101. And what happens when you do 11 or 12? That's a pretty simple IDOR. And so we can see all these different references here. And it really comes down to how the database query occurs on the back end. So all the stuff you're doing here gets translated, well, not everything. If there's a database query, if the website is performing that query, so it's basically translating what the user is doing into a database query that then gets executed on the database underneath. So this is, by doing this, like clicking this in and putting it in the URL, this is what is being performed on the back end. It is pretty confusing how it works, and it takes some time to wrap your brain around it. I always encourage people when there is a difficult subject, just like proxies and stuff like that, draw it out, write it down. When you start having all these proxies from system to system to system, if you're doing offensive stuff, it gets confusing. Same with web application stuff. You're trying to figure out how that bug is actually working. You may need to draw out where you think it's going as it travels through the website. So things to think about there. All right. So more IDOR stuff. We'll skip through. All right. So one, we have credentials. I do want to point out that this is pretty typical if we're doing a web app penetration test that we have credentials. And a lot of times in those penetration tests, we have credentials with different roles, and then we typically have two sets of credentials per role because we want to make sure that if we identify something at the same level, we have another one with the same permissions. We want to make sure that we can also do it there. It's just kind of like, scientific theory, right? We want to be able to create the same outcome given the same circumstances. So that's just how it is. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm not going to copy and paste this. I'm just going to type it in now. All right, so try Acme pound it 2025. I'm going to save it because. All right, so we should see a dashboard. We see it. Let's start by using developer tools. I do want to start out first by looking at it how I would as a web application penetration tester. So let's do what I said, which was let's click around and see what happens. What can we make this thing do? What do we have access to do? So some of the things we're looking for is what takes user input. So all these things should be targeted in a web application pen test. So we should be putting like JavaScript in here to see if we have XSS. We should see if we should be able to modify or maybe even change someone else's credentials or information in here. We want to click and look at stuff and select vouchers and see what happens with vouchers and look up here to see if there's anything that changes. What happens when we do all these things? We really need to see what's going on here. So we are kind of clicking around. I'm also looking at the URL to see if anything changes. We have an ID here. I don't know how to access it yet. We do have data here. Let's talk about editing. We do have the ability to edit this child. Nothing's changing in the URL. So this is probably going being sent via a post request, I would guess, in the background. None of this is clickable. That's what I'm doing. I'm clicking around and seeing what happens. Let's claim a voucher and see what happens. What happens if we do A? No voucher found. Okay. So we've kind of clicked around and played with it. Let's see if we can add another child. A. Let's just put any date in here. Add a child. And I'm just making it run through stuff to see what happens. So we pretty much work through all the pieces here. So let's go ahead and open Web Tools and work through whatever it wants us to work through. All right, we have our Web Tools or Developer Tools. Right click on the page and click Inspect and then click on the Network tab. So we're already in what's in an Inspect, and we need to be able to get to the Network tab, which is here. And let's see what it wants us to do. Now refresh. All right, we've refreshed so we can see. So here's that ID where it's going in, which is interesting. And we could probably, utilizing our cookie, manipulate this and get additional ones. You can see a response tab. You can see user ID. Now it says navigate to the storage. All right, tab and expand the local storage. Okay. Here we go. Let's change user ID to 11 and see what happens. So it wants us to come in here and it wants us to change this to 11. There we go. And now refresh the page. So it changed our user. I don't know if you saw that, but we are now a different user. So one of the things that may be fun here And so I also want to point out this could be a lot easier with the transparent proxy. So we could set up Zap, we could set up Burp Suite. It would probably help us significantly, but that's okay. We can do this the manual way. That's fine. We also did one, and not much changed. I was hoping, so one of the fun things, right, is guessing what the different numbers do. So whether that's 0 or 1, so the first one being perhaps the administrator. But we can see that no one's logging in when we do these, so that's kind of interesting, right? And how about 0, 1? Because it could be a 2-digit, right? So we have to account for what is it expecting? And apparently it is expecting not 0, 1. Let me try that again. I don't know why it did that. So that kicks you out. That's interesting. All right, let's see what else it says do. All right, we do have an IDOR. And one of the fun things with doing the transparent proxies is we can set it to iterate for. So instead of doing all this manually, we set it and say, hey, go from 0 to 100. We could tell it to stick to 2-digit numbers, whatever we wanted. It's going to do it for us. All right. All right, in disguise. Sometimes IDORs may be as simple as just a number. In certain cases, encoding may have been used. On the loaded profile, click on the eye icon next to the first child. So this one, Bilbo. Let's see what happens. Sometimes the IDOR let's see, encoding. Now go back to the network. We can see this here. So it's telling us it is base 64 encoded. Oops. What I wanted to do is grab this for you and show you what it is. So let's go to Cyber Chef. Welcome if you're joining. We are just doing some advent of cyber. So Cyber Chef is a cool tool that someone made. I'm very thankful for that allows you to do some decoding pretty fast. You probably see me doing it if you've been here before. So what it was saying is base 64 encoded, and I can come in here and decode it pretty quickly. And so all it is I put whatever the value is we want to decode. We make sure we pull over the correct recipe so we know it's base 64. So we want from base 64 and we get the answer. So that's pretty awesome. But what happens if we change that? It could change. So we might end up changing that in a second. We're going to follow this instead of going all kind of crazy here. Let's see. It's talking about some stuff are hashed. That is very true. And you may have to brute force the hashes and then rehash and resubmit. And you would brute force the hash because you want to know what the value is so you can kind of understand what they're doing. So yeah, there's a lot of tricks people use as developers. I have heard that a lot of people who start out with bug bounties, IDORs, now I have hiccups, wow. IDORs are one of the first things that some people look for, but I've also heard the advice to just pick one of the types of attacks and just go in on it and learn and become an expert in that type of attack. There are a lot of nuances, especially if you're trying to fight WAFs and any type of defenses in place that are messing with your exploit. All right, so let's see. Sometimes you have to dig quite deep. In this last case, let's take a look at our vouchers. While the values may look random, we may need to investigate. So let's look at our values of our vouchers. So let's take this look here. So we have our voucher. There's our voucher. There, let's see, here we go. I'm trying to find the data for the actual request here. So bear with me. Is it at the top? So child 2, code here. So here's the code. May look random. We need to investigate what the algorithm was used to generate them. This format looks like a UUID. We can see that because of the break here with the dashes. And try to understand what it is. Copy one of the vouchers to the website for this decoding, and you should see something like this. So let's go to UUID tool / the code. ID tools.com/decode. And let's paste in this guy. And we'll see what it tells us. Results version 1, single value integer. So it's talking about rebuilding some of these, and there's a lot of attacks like this, like a poodle padding oracle, lots of stuff where you're having to reverse the algorithm that was utilized to produce whatever you're looking at. And it's pretty interesting. So in this case, it says, for example, suppose we knew the elves always generated vouchers between 2000 and 2100. In that case, we can create UUIDs for that entire time period. So basically, what they're doing is reversing it. And so because if they believe it's time-based, then we can just create a bunch of UUIDs from that time period. And even if we didn't know what the UUIDs were, we can reproduce them and then try to utilize them as we're testing the site. So this is a fun way to approach web applications. So that's where they're saying they're now brute forcing it with all the different vouchers. All right. In secure direct object reference. There you go. What types of privilege escalations are most IDORs? I think they said they were considered lateral, right? Or is it horizontal? Let's see. Horizontal, there you go. I knew it was a sideways direction. What is the one for the parents that have 10? So let's go, we're on network. No, we did storage, local storage. D12 has 10 children. This one has 0 children, so that's not it. Hey, Bad Bunny. I actually don't know any of his songs. I guess I'm not cool. So we're looking for someone with 4 kids. Or not 4, 10 kids. I'm about to brute force this. This is crazy. Ah, I'm so lazy here. Ten kids, let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We got it. So what was our user ID? It was 15. All right. Bonus task. We got a few of them here. if you want to dive even deeper, use either base64 or MD5 child endpoint and try to find the ID number of the children born on 2019 0417. To make the iteration faster, consider using something like burp intruder. So let's play. Let's see. Do we have web? Here we go. I'm not going to use burp, and the reason why I'm not going to use burp is because I know it throttles if you're using the free version, and I'm not going to sit here forever. So we're not going to use the free version. So let's see if it should spin up in a second. All right, so essentially what the game plan is here, and I'm going to explain it to you because I want you to think about how should you approach problems, right? So here, what we're going to do is we are going to navigate to the site in here. We're going to see if we can't identify the same IDOR in here, and then we're going to have Zap iterate quickly over the birth date or the ID number, sorry, for the kid. And yeah, that should give us our answer. So let's do manual exploring. Let's go here. So let's launch the browser here. Should give it a second. I usually use burp, and I use the paid edition. So every time I have to use Zap, I have to remember how to do it, which isn't a big deal. First things first, we need to get the credentials again. So let's go back. Here it is. Nils, try hack me, pound it, 2025. All right, here we go. All right, what we need to do is we want the kid that was born here, and so we needed to view the kids. This was so I have a parent ID, but the kid also has like some fields that identify it. And so we are supposed to dive into that a little bit. And let's see what we want. What I do want to see is Zap, and I want child. This is what we want. Base64. And we want to brute force this. So, and we want to fuzz it is what we want to do. Fuzz location. So this is what we're looking to fuzz. This. And what we want are, I'm trying to remember how we do this in here. There's typically, so we'll do numbers to, I don't know, 100 and 50 maybe. And we'll add processors, base64 encode. There we go. All right, now we should be good. And now we just start the fuzzer. So basically what we did, it was said, hey, we know this is a number that's just base64 encoded. I want you to do 1 through 150, but before you send it to the site, I want you to encode it for me. And then we're going to look at the results and see what happens. Now, the trick here is we need to find cases where we get 200 okay. So let me pull this up a little bit. So we can see that not all of them came back as 200s. This could be for various reasons. I would say in this case, because we got quite a few that did come back, that they just don't exist. So we want to focus on the 22 that do exist, well, minus one here. But yeah, so we want to see what that is. Let's see what the response was. So we're looking for the birth date here. And we're looking for the birth date that is 4/17. And so we could probably do that in a quicker way, probably with a column or something like that. But we could just click through it because there's not that many. So in this case, we completed that task. In this case, but I mean, what I was going to do is just start backwards and we could just look at them, right? It's right here on the screen, so we can just click through it. Pretty straightforward. There are fun things you could probably do, like change the columns here, like I was saying, to ensure it's coming easier to see. We could also export it. There's a bunch of little tricks that we could do more than likely to make it easier for us. I'm going to just cheat. Let's see, use the /parent vouchers claim endpoint, find the voucher that is valid on this. So I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it because I don't get anything for it. So we're going to move forward to the next one so that we can get some more tickets or whatever. So did we finish this one? Okay, we did finish this one. Great. All right, so let's move back to this. Oh, it says we were only 85% complete. So what did we miss? Now we finished. There you go.